the highly anticipated second season finale of the top-rated 2025 disaster drama series, The Last of Us, has finally arrived. Joel is gone, a new stalker appears, and the final fungal outbreak is about to erupt. At the end of Season 1, Joel successfully delivered Ellie to the Firefly's base, thinking humanity had finally found a way to solve the cordyceps problem. But to his horror, the key to the cure was located in Ellie's brain. The Fireflies planned to extract her brain tissue, and once the surgery began, Ellie would not survive. To make matters worse, due to limited resources, the scientists couldn't even guarantee the development of a viable vaccine. Believing such a sacrifice was meaningless, Joel stormed into the operating room and took out the medical staff preparing for the surgery, then carried the unconscious Ellie away from the base. When Ellie woke up, she found herself in the wilderness. Joel didn't tell her the truth. He made up a lie. Learning that she wasn't the only immune person, Ellie felt disappointed. Was there really no hope left for human civilization? With no organization left to protect them, the two resumed their apocalyptic journey. But Joel had no idea. The Fireflies weren't completely wiped out. Some survivors quickly realized Joel was responsible after discovering the destroyed base. A revenge team was formed and began tracking him. A year and a half passed. After wandering the wilderness for years, Joel and Ellie finally found a survivor settlement in Wyoming. There was order, clean water, and medicine here. They settled in immediately. Thanks to his electrical repair skills, Joel became fairly well known in the camp. But as Ellie grew older, a rift formed between them. She became increasingly annoyed by Joel's nagging, thinking he acted more like an old woman. Joel, in turn, felt helpless facing Ellie's rebellion. Nearing 50, he had suffered too many losses. He just wanted Ellie to be careful when venturing out. To avoid Joel, Ellie joined the patrol team, assigned to scout the area. But neither of them knew their peaceful life was about to be shattered. That afternoon, while patrolling with Tommy, Ellie noticed that the number of infected around the camp had tripled compared to the previous month.
It ain't the scope, it's the shooter. You're getting good.
Who's next?
Let's see. Okay. There's a cluster of them up by the road.
Fortunately, they were all roaming alone, making them easy to spot from the outer posts. Tommy suspected the infected might be gathering, a bad sign. After taking care of the infected, Tommy prepared to report the situation, but Ellie didn't want to return with him. Trying to avoid Joel, she volunteered to join the scavenger team heading out to search for supplies, but Tommy thought it was too dangerous, and Joel had strictly forbidden her from leaving without permission. Hearing Joel's name again set Ellie off. She insisted on going with the team. Tommy had no choice but to agree. Instead of returning with Tommy, Ellie headed straight for the scavenger team preparing to leave. They crossed a mountain pass and arrived at an abandoned town. But as soon as they got there, Ellie saw the ground littered with dead infected. Something about the wounds was strange. They weren't caused by bullets or blades. As the team tried to make sense of it, one member spotted something disturbing. An infected was gnawing on a dead bear. Only then did they realize it was the bear that had killed those infected. After clearing out the remaining infected, the team prepared to search the area. But before they could split up, Ellie called out to Dina. She pointed at some footprints, warning Dina there might still be infected in the town. They followed the tracks into an abandoned building. Ellie threw a bottle into the hallway to create a distraction. Soon, an infected appeared at the end of the corridor. Ellie seized the moment and took it down with a knife. Dina gave Ellie a surprised look, impressed by her decisiveness. But just as they were about to leave, the floor suddenly collapsed beneath Ellie. She fell down but was lucky the floor wasn't high. She was only slightly bruised. Dina told Ellie not to move and went to find a rope. But just as Ellie was about to stand up, a strange hissing came from the corner. She turned to see a runner hiding in the shadows. Runners are an evolved form of infected, extremely fast, highly sensitive to sound, but completely blind. Ellie tried to sneak around it, but the creature had already sensed her and disappeared in a flash. She turned around to search the area, unaware the creature had reappeared behind her. But when she turned again, it was gone. Still, Ellie knew it was hiding somewhere nearby. She spotted a wall and realized if she could back up to it, the creature wouldn't be able to ambush her from behind. Just as she was about to move, the runner pounced. In the chaos, it bit her. Luckily, Ellie was immune and not afraid of the infection. She quickly pulled out her knife and took down the creature with a single strike. Meanwhile, Dina returned with the rope. With her help, Ellie climbed back up safely. The team searched the town thoroughly but found little in the way of supplies. With no other choice, they decided to head back. Back at the camp, Joel was assigned to repair a drainage pipe. But when they opened the manhole, they were shocked to find that the entire pipeline was filled with fungal roots. Seeing the thick web of tendrils, Joel felt something was off. He had inspected these pipes just days ago, and there was nothing like this back then. How had the fungus spread here so quickly? Thankfully, it was just a drainage pipe. If it had been the water supply, it would have been a disaster. With everyone's help, the blocked roots were soon cleared out. Since it was New Year's Day, the survivors were busy preparing for the celebration, and after finishing their tasks, everyone headed home. Learning that Ellie had joined the patrol squad, Joel felt helpless. He feared she might run into danger. He went to see Ellie, hoping to persuade her to leave the team. But when he got to her room, Joel couldn't find the words to speak. In the end, he just quietly left, holding a broken guitar. Watching Joel's back, Ellie didn't know what to say either. Feeling frustrated, Ellie went to the party and found Dina. After a few drinks, she ended up getting tipsy. With the music and alcohol taking over, Ellie and Dina unconsciously fell into each other's arms.
It's a family event.
Sorry.
Get the hell out of here.
Seeing Ellie being mocked, Joel was furious and scolded the old man who made the remark. But his actions only made Ellie angrier, deepening the rift between them. As the survivors danced, no one noticed that in the corner of the party area, a pile of dry grass had started to wiggle. Fungal roots were moving beneath it. Meanwhile, on a hillside outside the camp, a fully armed squad had arrived. Considering the complexity of the situation, the squad didn't enter the camp right away, but chose to set up on the hillside. By the next morning, Abby and the others realized the camp was much larger than expected. Even more surprising, patrols were rotating every hour, and everything from security to responsibilities was strictly organized. Owen thought they shouldn't rush in. It would be better to understand the camp's situation first before deciding on their next move. Abby agreed. They still had some tranquilizers and planned to ambush a patrol guard, then disguise themselves as soldiers to sneak into the camp. If they confirmed Joel was in the city, they would plan their next move. Everyone thought it was a solid idea. To figure out the patrol routes, Abby climbed up to the top of the hill alone. Back in the camp, Jessie woke up Ellie from her sleep. Seeing Jessie fully geared up, Ellie suddenly remembered today's patrol. She quickly washed up and rushed to the dining hall with Jessie. As soon as she arrived, Ellie saw a large crowd inside. It turned out the camp had accepted dozens of new survivors the previous day. The camp leader was introducing the rules and work assignments. While collecting food, Ellie ran into Seth, the man she had clashed with the night before. Now sober, Seth was deeply sorry for what had happened, and to show his apology, added an extra piece of steak to Ellie's sandwich. Ellie didn't think much of it and was about to leave when Seth mentioned that Joel had joined the patrol team. They had left an hour ago. Hearing that Joel was also out on patrol, Ellie was frustrated. To avoid running into him, she decided to head to the west side for patrol. But no one noticed that the sewer they had just cleared yesterday had been blocked again. When a worker knocked open the pipe, he found it packed with fungal threads once more. Seeing the writhing tendrils, the worker poured gasoline into the pipe and burned all the fungus. While everyone was busy, Tommy, who was on guard duty, noticed a storm approaching from the distance. Judging by the size, it looked serious. He picked up the radio to warn the patrol teams outside. But due to interference from the storm, the radio signal was jammed. Tommy ordered his team to use the hand-cranked siren to notify everyone to evacuate. The patrol teams quickly received the signal, but Ellie's team was too far from the camp. They couldn't make it back in time. Luckily, Jessie knew of a nearby shelter where they could hide from the storm. Back on the hilltop, Abby spotted Joel and Dina returning to camp. She tried to get closer to find a good ambush spot, but suddenly slipped and slid down the snowy slope. Fortunately, the snow cushioned her fall, and she wasn't hurt. Just as Abby stood up to resume tracking, she noticed something in the snow. It was a hand. Turning around, Abby was stunned. The snowfield was filled with frozen infected, and among them was an advanced, fully consumed infected monster. Abby tried to back out quietly, but as she searched for an exit, one of the infected suddenly started to move. Realizing they were waking up, Abby panicked and ran toward the nearby forest. As she fled the snowy field, a swarm of infected began to chase her. In desperation, she spotted a fenced wall with a ladder. She climbed up just in time, shaking off the infected behind her. But as she looked for a hiding place, a group of infected appeared outside the metal fence. The fence collapsed instantly, and Abby was pinned underneath. Luckily, a wall stopped the fence from crushing her completely. Abby crawled through a narrow gap to escape, but just as she was about to get out, an infected slipped in through a hole in the fence. With no time to escape, Abby was grabbed. Just when she thought she was done for, Joel appeared out of nowhere. With Joel's help, Abby made it into a warehouse. But as soon as they entered, the infected outside slammed into the doors. Joel knew the wooden door wouldn't hold for long, so he told Abby and Dina they needed to leave through the back exit. But with the storm raging outside, returning to camp was impossible. Just as Joel was stressing over what to do, Abby calmed down and recognized him. She told him that her group had a house up on the hill. It was secure and free of infected, a safe place to hide. Hearing there was a shelter nearby, Joel didn't hesitate and took Abby with him. They had just left when the infected broke through the warehouse door, but instead of chasing them, the infected rushed straight toward the camp below. Hearing the alarm, Tommy immediately issued an evacuation order. All women and children were sent to the basement, while the men grabbed their weapons and headed to the walls. But when they arrived at the walls, they were stunned by what they saw. An endless wave of infected was pouring toward the camp like a flood. As panic spread, Tommy's voice rang out over the crowd. His shouting snapped everyone back to their senses, and the survivors grabbed their weapons and opened fire on the infected. But there were too many. They couldn't keep up. Seeing the situation worsening, Tommy grabbed a torch and hurled it down. The gasoline ignited into flames, blowing up the infected that had gotten too close. With the fire forming a barrier, the defenders on the wall opened fire, wiping out the first wave of incoming infected. Just when everyone thought they had successfully defended the camp, more infected began emerging from the storm. But that wasn't the worst of it. Tommy noticed the infected were heading toward the wooden wall, the camp's weakest point. At that moment, Tommy spotted a massive infected among the swarm. With a single punch, the monster broke through the first fence. Seeing the breach, Tommy realized the camp was about to fall. He ordered everyone to spread out and prepare to defend from the rooftops. He and a few teammates strapped on flamethrowers, ready to use fire to repel the first wave. But just as the infected broke through the walls, two of his teammates fled the scene. With two flamethrowers missing, the firewall couldn't form properly. Left with no choice, Tommy had to charge in head-on. Although they had sealed off all doors and windows ahead of time, it was no match for the flood of infected. Several buildings were quickly overrun. Amid the chaos, Tommy noticed the heavy infected was heading straight for Maria's building. He deliberately fired shots to lure it away, but in the panic, he took a wrong turn and got trapped in a dead end. With the infected behind him, Tommy had no choice but to fire up the flamethrower. But the creature's thick skin made it nearly immune to the flames, and soon, Tommy ran out of fuel. Just when he thought it was the end, the monster suddenly collapsed. Back in the camp, Maria had opened the gates and unleashed all the guard dogs. Swift and aggressive, they were highly effective against the infected, and the creatures in the alley were quickly taken down. Meanwhile, Joel and Abby had reached the hillside outside the camp. Seeing the camp under attack, Joel wanted to return immediately, but Abby urged him to head to the cabin in the back hills first. She said her group had weapons there, and they could go help together. Besides, even if they went now, they couldn't re-enter the town. Joel agreed. Under Abby's lead, they quickly reached the cabin. Seeing the fire in the distance, Joel tried to contact Tommy, but there was no response from the camp. Anxious, Joel wanted to lead everyone in through the back, but just as he turned around, Abby grabbed Dina. Joel thought they were trying to rob them, but when Abby revealed her identity, Joel was stunned. As Joel fell to the ground, Abby wasn't done. She picked up a bat and walked toward him. At that time, Ellie had also received word that the camp had been breached. She and Jesse split up to find the patrol teams outside and help defend the city. While passing the north line, Ellie saw Joel's horse outside a cabin. Thinking Joel had taken shelter there from the storm, she decided to meet up with him. But when she entered, she saw Joel lying on the floor, his face covered in blood. Seeing Joel wounded, Ellie rushed in but was immediately tackled by someone at the door. Abby didn't want to hurt anyone else. She only wanted revenge. She picked up a broken golf club and drove it into Joel's neck.
No! Please don't! Please don't do it, please!
Watching Joel die so brutally, Ellie was completely stunned. She never imagined that after only a few hours apart, Joel would be gone forever. Abby and her group didn't linger after taking their revenge. They left the cabin immediately. Back in the city, the infected that had breached the camp were soon eliminated. Thanks to the survivors' efforts, the camp survived the outbreak. But the cost was devastating. Half of the survivors died defending the walls. When Ellie opened her eyes again, she found herself in the camp's hospital. The moment she awoke, Joel's death flashed in her mind. It took several days of rest before Ellie could recover. Fearing she couldn't cope with the trauma, Tommy arranged for her to see a therapist. Though Ellie seemed strong on the outside, deep down, she still couldn't accept Joel's death. Leaving the hospital, Ellie returned home, and at the doorstep, she saw flowers laid out by the residents in Joel's memory. Looking at Joel's belongings, Ellie finally broke down in tears. She remembered the time they had fled together. If not for Joel's fierce protection, she might have died in the ruins long ago. While Ellie was lost in grief, Dina came to visit with a box of cookies. Dina had been there when Joel was killed. Though she was knocked out later, she had noticed some important details before fainting. Hearing Dina mention the fireflies, Ellie began to understand the motive behind the attack. Dina knew Ellie wanted revenge, but she also knew Ellie couldn't face Abby's group alone. She suggested Ellie go to the council. If at least half of the members agreed, they could send out a team to help her. Hearing this, Ellie thought it was a good idea. She immediately went to Tommy and asked for his support during the vote. Though Ellie didn't say it directly, Tommy knew it was the Fireflies who had killed Joel. He promised to back her, but warned that the other council members might not.
Ellie, buried our dead 10 miles south of town. If you want to visit them.
I'm gonna run away to Seattle.
To gain more support, Ellie also went to Jesse and others. Jesse agreed to support Ellie, but told her not to get her hopes up. Most council members were older, and while they got along well normally, when things got serious, they'd always prioritize the camp's survival. The next morning, all survivors gathered in the auditorium. Due to the chaos, the camp was running low on food and clean water. Even worse, everyone was working on repairing the walls. There was no manpower to spare for forming a strike team. Just as Jesse predicted, the council was hesitant to approve Joel's revenge mission.
I said that Joel meant so much to so many of us, but he wasn't the only one. I lost my sister that day. A lot of people in here buried family. And now you want to send, what, you're saying 16 of our best? Well, while they're gone, who's going to be on the wall if raiders come? A wall that's barely mended. And none of you up there can promise us that all 16 will come back.
Ellie's proposal was rejected. Out of 8 votes, she got only 3. Though she had expected it, the result still disappointed her. Returning home, Ellie picked up Joel's gear and prepared to take revenge on her own. But just as she reached the back door, she saw Seth and Dina waiting for her. It turned out Dina had already guessed Ellie would go alone and didn't feel comfortable letting her. Since Seth was injured in the last battle and couldn't leave the camp, he handed his weapon to Ellie as a sign of support. Looking at the weapon in Seth's hands, Ellie was deeply moved. She and Dina mounted a horse and rode out of the camp. They arrived at the cemetery. Looking at Joel's grave, Ellie swore to herself that she would avenge him. Based on the direction Abby and her group left in, Dina suspected they were headed for Seattle. That place used to be a federal government base, but it fell during a massive infected assault, and there had been no news from it since. Although it was unclear whether Abby's group was really in Seattle, Ellie decided to take the chance and head there. Crossing forests and wilderness, Ellie and Dina soon arrived near the outskirts of Seattle. On a small path, they stumbled upon a corpse. At first, Ellie thought this survivor had been killed by infected, but when she got closer, she realized the man had been shot, and there was a strange symbol painted on his clothes. At that moment, Ellie noticed bullet casings scattered on the ground. The casings were of different calibers, which meant the attacker wasn't a lone shooter, it was a whole squad. Ellie was just about to speak when she turned and saw Dina running out of the nearby forest in a panic. Curious, Ellie went into the woods and discovered more bodies. Shockingly, 2 of them were children. Ellie suspected Abby's squad was responsible, but Dina disagreed. Although the Fireflies were ruthless, they never killed indiscriminately, which meant another armed faction was operating in the area. Not daring to stay long, they quickly moved through the forest. After several days of trekking, they finally arrived in Seattle. But the once bustling city had become a wasteland, with no signs of survivor activity. Ellie decided to head into the city first. If they couldn't find Abby's group, they would search elsewhere. But they didn't notice that shortly after they turned away, a soldier was watching the area from deep within the city center. Confirming that no infected were active, the soldier sent out a signal.
You're all good. We can move up.
This military group had armored vehicles and heavy caliber weapons, but they weren't federal forces. They were members of the infamous Washington Liberation Front. Back when the cordyceps outbreak began, the Federal Emergency Disaster Authority sealed off Seattle to prevent the fungus from spreading. But instead of offering shelter, medicine, or even basic food, they abandoned the city. Under extreme oppression, a survivor named Isaac led a rebellion. They overthrew the authorities and formed the Washington Liberation Front, taking control of Seattle. As the disaster continued, the WLF grew in strength, eventually becoming one of the most powerful factions in the post-apocalyptic world. Because their symbol was a wolf, survivors simply called them WLF. Apart from the WLF, another region of Seattle was controlled by a large survivor faction known as the Sarapites. As the name suggests, every member bore a ritual scar. Their leader, known as the Prophet, was a religious figure who believed the outbreak was divine punishment for humanity's greed and expansion. They rejected all forms of technology. At first, the 2 factions coexisted peacefully, but as resources dwindled, tensions escalated, eventually leading to open conflict. The bodies Ellie and Dina had seen in the forest were Saraphite members. Besides these 2 major groups, other areas in Seattle held small survivor camps, but most were tiny, with only a handful of people. The WLF's large-scale mobilization quickly drew attention from other camps. Meanwhile, Ellie and Dina were still exploring the outskirts of the city. They found an old hospital hoping to scavenge some medicine, but the place had already been looted by other survivors. Looking at the empty shelves, Dina sighed with frustration, but just as she turned to leave, she noticed a reagent on one of the racks. Leaving the hospital, they continued their exploration. The city was even more desolate than they had imagined, with overgrown weeds and rusted vehicles everywhere. As they walked down a street choked with grass, they came upon some remains at an intersection. Judging by the uniforms, these were military soldiers, but they hadn't been killed by infected. They had been shot. Dina remembered stories from elders back at camp about Seattle. It was said to be one of the original epicenters of the cordyceps outbreak. No one knew exactly where the fungus came from. By the time people realized it, the city was already overrun with fungus, and soon after, the world descended into a full-blown apocalypse. Just then, Dina spotted several satellite dishes in the distance with slogans written on them. It was obvious there was a camp over there. Since they were unfamiliar with the area, they didn't approach right away. Instead, they decided to wait until nightfall to investigate. They found a dilapidated building in the ruins to use as a temporary shelter. To Ellie's surprise, the place turned out to be an old music store, and she even found a guitar in perfect condition. She began playing the tune Joel had once taught her. Meanwhile, in the ruins of an old kitchen, the WLF's leader was interrogating a Saraphite captive. The earlier ambush had cost the WLF dearly, and now they wanted revenge. But the Saraphite, named Malcolm, was tough. Even after being scalded with boiling water, he didn't give up any information. Enraged, Isaac finally executed him. After hours of waiting, night finally fell. Ellie and Dina returned to the building they had spotted earlier. They carefully scouted the area but didn't see a single guard, which Ellie found suspicious. They entered through a broken second-floor window, and right away, Ellie spotted a man who had been shot full of arrows like a human pincushion. The man's shirt bore the WLF insignia. Dina recognized it. She'd seen something similar on Abby's backpack. Clearly, this was WLF territory. Leaving the corridor, they stepped deeper into the building, and what they saw next was horrific. Several WLF members had been brutally murdered and then hung from the ceiling in the center of the main hall. The gruesome scene made Dina vomit on the spot. On one of the hall's walls, Ellie saw the same symbol that had been painted on the corpses in the forest. She immediately realized the group that attacked this outpost was the same squad they had encountered in the woods. Just as they were panicking, flashes appeared in the hallway, and Ellie and Dina quickly hid behind a stack of boxes. Out of the corner of her eye, Ellie saw it was a WLF squad rushing in, likely reinforcements. Seeing their comrades slaughtered, the squad leader was furious. He shouted that they were going to kill every last Saraphite. Watching the aggressive squad, Ellie glanced at Dina and signaled for a quiet retreat. In the hallway, Ellie found a window. She tried to open it, only to discover it was locked. While she was figuring out how to unlock it, a soldier heard the noise. In a panic, Ellie had to hide behind a door, but it was a terrible spot. If the man turned around, he would see her immediately. As the soldier started to turn, Ellie made a split-second decision and attacked first, choking him from behind. The struggle attracted another soldier, but Dina arrived just in time and shot him. Dina broke the window, and the two escaped from the ruined building. But when they got to the ground, they realized it was a dead end. Panicking, they ran into a storage room, where they found a narrow tunnel just wide enough to crawl through. By the time the WLF soldiers arrived, Ellie and Dina had already disappeared down the passage. After crawling through the passage for a long time, they arrived at an abandoned subway station. Thinking they were finally safe, they were about to rest, when sudden noises echoed from the distance. Ellie and Dina had no choice but to hide in a corner and stay completely silent. Soon, a group of soldiers entered the subway, lighting signal flares and searching for them. But they didn't notice the nearby fungus twitching beside the flare.
Supposed to be empty.
As the infected attacked the soldiers, Ellie and Dina climbed on top of a subway car, trying to escape into one of the train compartments. But when they jumped in, they found the car was full of skeletons. Before they could react, the outside squad was completely overrun by infected, and now the infected had spotted Ellie and Dina hiding in the car. The old subway train couldn't hold against the onslaught. They were forced to run toward the other end. But the other end was blocked by even more infected. They were trapped. Just then, Ellie spotted an emergency hatch above their heads. They climbed out of the subway car and jumped over a fence. The infected were blocked by the barrier, for now. Dina and Ellie finally reached the gate, only to find it had rusted shut. Downstairs, the iron fence didn't last long. It was quickly smashed apart by the infected. With the infected closing in fast, Ellie kicked the gate with all her strength, and to her surprise, it moved. She slipped through, but Dina got stuck behind it. At that moment, an infected lunged at Dina, mouth wide open. In a panic, Ellie reached out her hand. Dina kicked the creature away and shoved the gate with all her strength. It finally budged. With the infected momentarily stuck behind the gate, Dina and Ellie escaped the subway and ran across the streets back to camp. But just as they arrived, Dina suddenly pointed her gun at Ellie. Startled, Ellie was forced to confess that she was immune.
Fuck, I'm immune. I can't get infected. I've been banned before. I'm still here. I know you don't believe me. I get it. I wouldn't believe me either, but...
Though Ellie kept explaining her immunity, Dina was still uneasy and couldn't take her eyes off her. It wasn't until deep into the night, after seeing Ellie remain unchanged, that Dina finally calmed down. After surviving such a near-death escape, Dina could no longer hide her feelings. They embraced tightly. The next morning, Dina pulled a pregnancy test from her backpack. It turned out she had been involved with Jesse back at the camp, and now she was pregnant. But she didn't love Jesse. Her heart belonged to Ellie, which is why she insisted on following her on this journey. Ellie was surprised, but overjoyed by the news. As they began dreaming of names for the baby,
He just said Nora. Yeah. She's gonna know where Abby is.
The radio suddenly came to life. Through the static, Ellie heard Abby's name. Dina pulled out a map. They discovered the WLF was gathering in a specific zone. They climbed to the rooftop and saw an explosion in the distance. The WLF and the Sarapites were in a fierce battle, which lasted for hours until the afternoon before finally calming down. Though they didn't know why the two sides were fighting, judging by the gunfire and blasts, Ellie could tell both factions had taken heavy losses. Meanwhile, inside the WLF's office, senior member Hanrahan met with squad leader Elise to discuss the recent clash. Hanrahan believed it was the WLF who had started the fight and worried the Sarapites would use it as a reason to declare war. But Elise told her it had all been a mistake.
There's a shooting near the borderline between us and the Scars. Treaty might be broken. He's dealing with that now. If it's war again, we're gonna need all the soldiers we have, so he's wondering why you apparently killed some of your own men.
Due to the worsening resource shortage, the exploration team had set their sights on Seattle's hospital. The downtown hospital had once been the largest in the city, filled with medical equipment and stockpiled drugs. Whoever controlled the hospital controlled Seattle. But during the outbreak, the hospital had taken in a large number of infected and eventually fell, becoming the most contaminated site in the entire city. Over the years, both the WLF and the Sarapites had tried to clear out the hospital and seize control over it. But it was swarming with infected, and clearing it was impossible. Even the smallest noise would draw hordes of monsters. Just a few days ago, Elise noticed something strange during patrol. There seemed to be fewer infected inside. Out of curiosity, she sent in a small team to investigate. To their surprise, they found the building empty. They quickly secured floors 1 through 6, but when they reached the basement, things took a terrifying turn.
He's my best. A few minutes in, he radios back. There's cordyceps on the walls, the floor. Chances are they'll find infected next, but that's what they were down there for, so I told him to proceed. 5 minutes later, he radios again. This time I thought he was struggling to breathe. He could hardly talk. Maybe he had been bit. I said, Leon, were you bit? He said it's in the air. He said it's in the air. See, listen.
As Elise finished explaining, Hanrahan realized something was wrong. It seemed all the infected had moved down to the 3rd basement level. No one knew what was down there, but now wasn't the time to worry about that. The hospital was vital to the WLF, so Hanrahan immediately ordered all wounded personnel be transferred there. To avoid any mishaps, she told Elise to seal off the entrances to the basement and post guards around the clock. If anything happened, they were to report it immediately. On top of that, Hanrahan warned Elise to stay alert for the Sarapites. Since the WLF had taken the hospital, the Sarapites would never let it go easily. Ellie and Dina, after a day of observation, realized the battle had taken place at the city hospital. Based on the radio chatter, they had roughly pieced together the power distribution in Seattle. The eastern part of the city was controlled by the Sarapites, who followed a leader called the Prophet and rejected all forms of technology. The western part, on the other hand, belonged to the WLF. The two factions drew a line in the middle of the city and developed their own sides separately. Yesterday's battle had been triggered by a massive horde of infected attacking a WLF base. Fortunately, the WLF's firepower held them off. Given how complicated the situation was, Ellie and Dina didn't rush in blindly. Dina pulled out the map and studied the streets and layout around the conflict zone. After a few minutes of careful analysis, she noticed something odd. Despite the intense battle, there was a particular area both the WLF and Sarapites had avoided. Through process of elimination, Dina realized this area was the Central Hospital of Seattle.
They run a line of patrols north and south, like this. They're pretty evenly spread out, so they're watching that entire area. But there's a gap between here and here. Now on this map, do you see this long-ass building? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we cut through and slip by. What is that long-ass building? No clue. But it's set off from the residential area, so maybe it's a warehouse or something.
It's a big fucking something for them just to ignore. Why aren't they patrolling it? Infected.
Probably. If we make it through, we pop out behind their patrols. The hospital's maybe a quarter mile from there. Nora should be on the 1st floor, far end of the north wing.
Wait, how the fuck do you know that?
Crossing that zone would allow them to slip directly into WLF territory. But the plan was risky. They might awaken dormant infected in the process. Looking at Dina's strategy, Ellie decided they should take the risk. They packed up their gear and headed toward the combat area. But as soon as they turned a corner, they stumbled upon a horrific scene. A small squad of Sarapites had been brutally murdered, their bodies piled by the roadside. On the wall nearby, Ellie and Dina saw the same strange symbol from the forest. It was clear both the WLF and Sarapites had sent people into this area. Worried about the danger, Ellie told Dina to go back, but Dina insisted on staying with her. With no choice, Ellie led Dina forward. After moving through several blocks, they reached the edge of WLF territory just before nightfall. Just as Dina suspected, there were no patrols in the area, but fences had been installed, along with searchlights scanning the perimeter. That didn't stop Ellie and Dina. They timed the lights carefully, cut through the fence, and slipped inside unnoticed. But once inside the building, Dina noticed something was off. While the outside was swarming with patrols, the interior was completely empty. Was this even the real WLF base? Ellie also found it suspicious, but since they were already there, she thought they might as well explore. Maybe it was just an outpost. As Ellie scanned the room, she looked up and saw a pair of eyes watching them from a dark corner. Seeing the infected in the distance, Ellie suddenly realized why there were no signs of survivors here. It was because infected were lurking around. She recognized this type. She had seen them in the library before. Fast, extremely sensitive to sound, and incredibly dangerous. Luckily, there was only one. Ellie motioned to Dina to sneak back out quietly, but when she turned around, she saw the hallway behind them was crawling with the same creatures. Staring at the infected gathering in the corners, both Ellie and Dina froze in fear. Before they could react, the creatures closed in and surrounded them. As the infected were about to attack, Ellie spotted an iron cage not far away. She told Dina to get inside while she drew the monsters away. Ellie shouted to distract them and lured the infected away from the hallway. While the creatures chased after Ellie, Dina slipped into the cage, but more infected appeared in the corridor, trapping her. At the same time, Ellie was tackled to the ground by another infected. As they were both being attacked, gunfire suddenly rang out inside the building. To their surprise, Jesse appeared. Ellie and Dina were stunned. After realizing they had left the camp, Tommy became worried and brought Jesse with him to Seattle. They had found Dina's map in the building and tracked them down. With Jesse's help, the infected inside the building were quickly eliminated, but the gunfire drew the attention of a WLF patrol squad. Luckily, the squad was still far away, and the group escaped the building in time. To shake their pursuers, they fled into a nearby forest. Just when they thought they were safe, a scream echoed through the woods. Ellie followed the sound and saw a group of Sarapites who had captured a WLF soldier. The man leading the group pulled out a knife and cut open the soldier's stomach. The horrifying scene shocked Ellie, Dina, and Jesse watching from nearby. But before they could retreat, an arrow suddenly shot out from the bushes and struck Dina in the thigh. Knowing they'd been discovered, Ellie told Jesse to take the injured Dina and leave. They agreed to meet at the theater. Before Dina could protest, Ellie opened fire to draw the Sarapites away. Using the distraction, Jesse led Dina in the opposite direction out of the forest. Meanwhile, Ellie hid beneath a large tree. Using a hollowed-out trunk, she successfully avoided her pursuers. But instead of regrouping with the others, Ellie turned back toward the WLF base. Due to the earlier intrusion, the WLF had increased patrols. The main gate was now heavily guarded, and Ellie had no choice but to give up. Just as she was about to leave, she spotted a tunnel entrance nearby. Cautiously, she slipped through the tunnel and entered the hospital. Inside, all the wounded WLF soldiers had been transferred, and Nora was tending to them. Seeing Nora in the hospital made Ellie's heart race. She waited until Nora went into the pharmacy for supplies, then quietly approached her from behind.
Put that shit down. You remember me? Yeah, you remember me.
What do you want?
Where's Abby?
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
You shoot me, the sound will have every soldier come running.
You'll still be dead.
Nora was shocked to see Ellie. She mentioned Joel, trying to stall for time. At the mention of Joel, Ellie hesitated for a moment. That hesitation gave Nora the chance she needed. She threw nearby items at Ellie and bolted from the room. But all the soldiers were out on patrol. There were no guards left inside the hospital. In her panic, Nora jumped down an elevator shaft. But the old elevator's cable snapped, sending her crashing into the basement. Ellie followed close behind, but upon landing, she noticed something was wrong with the basement. The walls were overrun with fungal growth, some of which had spread across the exits. Ellie turned on her flashlight and began exploring the dark basement. She passed through a hallway and entered a room. The scene inside was worse. The walls were covered with wooden fungal growths, and tiny spores floated thick in the air. That's when Ellie noticed something even stranger. One infected had become embedded in the fungus, and with every breath, it released a fine powder into the air. Looking at the creature on the wall, Ellie realized the infected had evolved again. Thankfully, she was immune and didn't fear the spores in the air. She continued down the dark corridor and eventually found Nora lying on the ground. By now, Nora had already been infected and could no longer move. The moment Nora saw that Ellie was completely fine, it hit her. Ellie was the girl from the Fireflies, the one Joel had protected.
You're her. The immune girl, you're real.
Yeah? Where's Abby?
Nora tried to explain on Abby's behalf, saying they came after Joel only for revenge, but Ellie didn't want to hear any of it. She already knew why Joel had slaughtered people at the hospital, and now all she wanted was revenge, to find Abby. Of course, Nora refused to give her any information. Seeing Nora stay silent, Ellie didn't want to waste time. She picked up a steel pipe from the floor and smashed it into Nora's leg. After venting her anger, Ellie left the basement. The moment she stepped outside, heavy rain began pouring from the sky. As she looked up at the gloomy sky, memories of her past with Joel flooded back. After they left the Fireflies base, they arrived at their current camp and gradually settled into life there. That year, Ellie turned 15. Joel prepared a birthday cake for her and even crafted a guitar by hand using animal bones and wooden planks. Joel's gift made Ellie incredibly happy. During the outbreak, she had still been a child and had never seen the beauty of human civilization. During a patrol break, Joel secretly took Ellie to the city museum. He showed her dinosaur skeletons, solar system models, and even let her sit inside an Apollo 18 space capsule. Their rift began when Ellie turned 17. On that day, Joel wanted to surprise her with a birthday cake, but when he got to the door, he heard strange noises inside the room. Seeing Ellie and Dina in disheveled clothes, Joel was visibly shaken. Then, he noticed a tattoo machine on the floor. Turning back to Ellie, he saw a fresh tattoo on her burned arm. Looking at the contraband on the table and thinking of what he had just seen, Joel was overwhelmed and couldn't accept it. Because of that, Joel and Ellie argued. It turned into a shouting match. Although Ellie knew Joel meant well, she felt smothered by his concern during her rebellious phase. She moved out of the house and started living in the garage. That moment created a deep rift between them. Joel even consulted a therapist named Gail to try to mend their relationship, but Gail advised Joel not to interfere too much with Ellie's social life. "It's the end of the world," she said. "The kids should do whatever they want. Who knows if the camp will fall tomorrow? Better to enjoy the time we have left."
Oh, so what's a moth?
If you believe in that shit.
Joel took her advice and stopped interfering. Slowly, things began to improve between them. However, on Ellie's 19th birthday, an unexpected incident occurred once again. Ellie had always wanted to join the patrol team and become a scout, but Joel was too worried about her safety to agree. Finally, on her birthday, Joel said yes. To help her get familiar with the process, Joel took her on a full day of patrol. The route led into the western forest, where infected often lurked, so they remained extremely cautious along the way. Halfway through the patrol, they suddenly heard a distress call over the radio. Joel and Ellie rushed to respond. As they entered the forest, they saw a horse galloping past, dragging a man along the ground. Following the trail, they soon came across the body of an infected lying in the grass. Behind a large tree, they found the wounded patrol member. His name was Eugene, and he had been bitten while fighting off an infected. According to camp rules, anyone bitten must be dealt with immediately. Eugene knew he was infected and was ready to die, but before that, he just wanted to say goodbye to his wife. Joel, unsure how long Eugene had before turning, refused to bring him back. He told Eugene to pass on his last words and promised to deliver the message. Joel's cold response left Ellie in disbelief. She asked Eugene to move his hand to see if the infection had spread.
Hold out your hand. Now count, slowly, clearly, from 1 to 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
He has time. We tie him up and we bring him back.
Seeing that he could still move his fingers freely, Ellie believed the fungus hadn't fully taken over. She suggested they tie Eugene up and let him see his wife one last time. After Ellie's repeated pleading, Joel reluctantly agreed. He asked Ellie to fetch the horse while he stayed behind to watch Eugene. Ellie looked back, hesitant.
I promise.
After Joel assured her, she turned and left the forest. But no sooner had she gone than Joel dragged Eugene to the edge of a nearby cliff. By the time Ellie returned with the horse, Eugene had been shot in the head. Staring at the body, Ellie felt Joel had lied to her. They brought Eugene's body back to camp. Hearing that her husband had been bitten on patrol, Gail rushed to the gate. Joel passed on Eugene's final words. But as Gail mourned, Ellie told her what had really happened in the forest.
That's not what happened. He begged to see you. He had time. Joel promised to take him to you. He promised us both. And then Joel shot him in the head.
Learning that her husband could have seen her one last time but was killed by Joel, Gail shoved him away in anger. That incident only deepened the rift between Joel and Ellie. It wasn't until the night before the infected Horde attack that things reached a tipping point. At a dance party, Joel saw Ellie chatting with Jesse. Though it bothered him a bit, it seemed better than what he had seen before. Having had a few drinks to ease his frustration, Joel turned back and saw Ellie once again embracing Dina. He wanted to approach them but didn't know what to say. Just then, Seth, unable to hold back, scolded Ellie and Dina. Seeing Ellie being mocked, Joel, still half drunk, couldn't take it and pushed Seth, leading to the argument we saw in episode 1. Back home, Joel realized he had overreacted. He wanted to apologize, but didn't know how. Just as Joel was feeling down, Ellie returned home and took the initiative to find him and say she was sorry. Her gesture made Joel sigh deeply. He also apologized, admitting he was old-fashioned and struggled to accept 2 daughters, but promised he would try. Though Joel sounded sincere, Ellie could tell he was lying. She asked about the fireflies, why he stopped the surgery. Faced with her questions, Joel finally told the truth.
Would have killed you.
Then I was supposed to die. That was my purpose. My life would have mattered, but you took that from me. You took it from everyone.
Yes.
Learning that Joel had killed the doctors to save her, Ellie was overwhelmed with guilt. The conversation ended on a sour note. The next morning, Joel had already left for patrol, but by the time Ellie found him again, he had been brutally killed by Abby. Even though Joel's love often felt suffocating, Ellie knew deep down everything he did was to protect her. Avenging Joel became her only purpose. Meanwhile, Jesse had returned to the temporary camp with Dinah. Luckily, the arrow had only hit Dina's thigh and missed any vital areas. Jesse used high-proof alcohol to clean and bandage the wound. At dawn, an exhausted Ellie returned to camp. Seeing Dina safe brought her great relief. She told Dina what had happened with Nora at the hospital. Hearing that Abby's squad was at the WLF made Dina anxious. After days of observation, Dina realized the WLF was far larger than Jackson. They likely couldn't take it on alone. While Dina wrestled with what to do, Ellie revealed the real reason the Fireflies had gone after Joel.
There was a Firefly base in Salt Lake City. They had a hospital there. They were gonna use me to make a cure. But it meant that I would have died. And Joel found out. And he killed everyone in the hospital. Everyone. He killed Abby's father.
We need to go home.
Hearing Ellie's story, Dina was visibly shaken. She wasn't sure if she should continue helping Ellie seek revenge. The next morning, Jesse and Ellie packed their gear. They planned to meet up with Tommy and then find a way to leave Seattle. Just as they were about to go, Dina hobbled over with her injured leg and handed Ellie a protective charm. On the way, Jesse remained silent, clearly harboring anger toward Ellie. Trying to ease the tension, Ellie thanked Jesse for his help last night. But before she could finish, Jesse snapped. It turned out the rescue hadn't been authorized by the camp. Tommy had dragged Jesse into it on his own. Jesse understood Ellie's desire for revenge, but he believed she never should have brought pregnant Dina into this. What if something happened to her, or the baby? As they argued, gunshots suddenly rang out nearby. They rushed into a ruined building for cover. But just as they got inside, a boy ran in after them. Before he could hide, WLF soldiers caught up. They stripped the boy and dragged him outside. Ellie wanted to intervene but was stopped by Jesse. Angry, she glared at him, only to be scolded. Jesse didn't want to get involved in the WLF Sarapites war, nor in Ellie's revenge mission. All he wanted now was to find Tommy and get out of Seattle. Meanwhile, at the WLF camp, Elise found the organization's leader. WLF appeared to be preparing for a strike operation. Elise briefed Isaac on the attack at the hospital the previous night. Isaac assumed the intruders were Saraphite members and instructed Elise to increase patrols to prevent another ambush. Through the abandoned streets, Ellie and Jesse finally reached the meeting point where they were supposed to rendezvous with Tommy. But when they entered the building, Tommy was nowhere to be found. Jesse guessed he had gone out to scout and would probably return soon. He decided to wait there. Just as they put down their gear to rest, a frantic call came through the radio.
sniper. It's gotta be Tommy. This is South Lake. There's 2 piers right here. It's gotta be one of them. Pack your shit. We're going up.
Hearing the WLF's call for backup, Jesse quickly realized the person they were chasing was likely Tommy. Ellie and Jesse took a map to the rooftop to scan the terrain. Jesse suspected Tommy had fled south, but while observing, Ellie spotted a whale insignia on a building near the northern docks. She remembered her earlier conversation with Nora and suspected Abby might be stationed at the boat near the dock.
The whale. The whale.
What?
She's in the aquarium.
Who?
Abby, the one who killed Joel, she's in the aquarium. It's too far to swim. We need a boat.
What are you talking about?
What?
Oh, Tommy's over there. That's where we're going.
She wanted to check it out, but Jesse insisted they save Tommy first. This led to an argument, and ultimately, they parted ways. Navigating through a maze of crumbling city blocks, Ellie reached the dock alone. Because of the storm, the area was pitch dark, and the sea was churning violently. At the dock, Ellie saw 2 small boats. Just as she was about to move in, 2 WLF soldiers started heading toward the dock. Initially, Ellie thought they were just on patrol and considered taking them out. But just as she prepared to strike, a bright light suddenly lit up the sea. The soldiers loaded several crates onto a speedboat and quickly headed for a distant island. After the team left, Ellie reached the dock and boarded the remaining boat, heading toward the aquarium. But soon after setting off, a large wave hit, capsizing the boat and throwing her into the water. When Ellie opened her eyes, she had washed up on shore. Seeing the overturned boat nearby, she got up, ready to move again. But just then, several Sarapites appeared. Mistaking Ellie for a WLF soldier, they prepared to hang her. Ellie tried to explain, but the Sarapites wouldn't listen. Just when she thought she was going to die, a horn sounded deep in the forest.
The village.
It turned out the squad Ellie had seen at the dock was a WLF strike team attacking the Sarapites. Hearing their camp was under attack, the Sarapites left Ellie behind and rushed off. Barely escaping death, Ellie returned to the shoreline and resumed her journey to the aquarium by boat. After a few minutes of rough travel, she finally arrived. But the place was in chaos. There was no sign of life. Just as Ellie thought she was wrong, she found several blood-stained bandages in a room and continued deeper into the ship. Inside one cabin, she found 2 of Abby's teammates, Owen and Mel. Holding them at gunpoint, Ellie demanded to know where Abby was. Owen tried to fight back but was immediately shot and killed. When Ellie turned to question Mel, she noticed blood seeping from her neck. The bullet had passed through Owen and hit Mel, but that wasn't the worst of it. After Mel collapsed, Ellie realized Mel was pregnant. Struggling, Mel pulled out a knife, begging Ellie to save her baby. Ellie held the knife but didn't know what to do. While she hesitated, Mel died from blood loss. Staring at Mel's body, Ellie was overwhelmed with guilt. As she wept, Tommy and Jesse arrived at the scene. Using the storm as cover, they safely returned to camp. But Ellie was completely shattered by the accidental killing of Mel. She finally understood. Revenge only leads to more hatred. With that realization, Ellie decided to take Dina back to Jackson first and worry about revenge later. Although Jesse still thought Ellie was reckless, he no longer blamed her. Just as they made peace, gunfire rang out outside. Alarmed, they rushed to the door, but as soon as they opened it, Jesse was shot. Seeing Abby standing at the entrance, Ellie froze. Abby had tracked them down. Following the clues left by her fallen teammates, she had found the camp. Ellie pleaded with Abby to let Jesse and Tommy go, saying she was the one responsible, but there was no way Abby would agree.
Just let him go.
He killed my friends.
No, I did. I was looking for you. I didn't mean to hurt them. I know why you killed Joel. He did what he did to save me. I'm the one that you want. Just let him go.
I let you live. I let you live. And you wasted it.
So, can Ellie finish her revenge? Did Tommy and Jesse survive? That wraps up all the events from Season 2 of the 2025 hit apocalyptic drama series The Last of Us. Judging by the ending, the show clearly isn't finished. We'll have to wait for Season 3 to find out what happens next. If you love this series, make sure to save this video to your collection. As soon as the next season is released, I'll bring you an update right away. Alright, that's all for today. See you next time.